I remember the exact moment my world shattered. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies. No screaming, no plates thrown against walls. Just the quiet buzz of my wife Laurel's phone receiving a text at 11:37 at night while she was in the shower. We'd been married for 15 years. 15 years of building a life together in our 3-bedroom colonial in Westchester. 15 years of Sunday brunches with her friends, dinner parties where I'd dutifully mix drinks while they chatted about things I wasn't supposed to understand. "Girl talk," Laurel would say with that smile that still made my chest tighten after all these years. The text notification lit up her screen as I passed by the nightstand. I wasn't the snooping type, had never been. But something about the late hour made me pause. Maybe it was because Laurel had been going out more frequently with her friend Vanessa. Maybe it was because she'd been password protecting her phone for the past 3 months, something she'd never done before. "Just work stuff," she'd explained. "Confidential client information." I glanced at the screen. From Vanessa. "Still on for tomorrow? Can't wait to feel your touch again. Drew has no idea." My fingers went numb. The room seemed to tilt sideways as I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over the notification. This had to be a mistake. Maybe it was meant for someone else. Maybe it was some inside joke I didn't get. I swiped open the message, and then I saw the thread of text before it. The explicit details, the photos, the plans they'd made, not just with Vanessa, but with Madison and Kylie too. All of them, her closest friends. All of them for years. The bathroom door opened. Steam billowed out as Laurel stepped into the bedroom, towel wrapped around her body, her dark hair wet against her shoulders. She saw me standing there, her phone in my hand, and her expression changed in an instant. Not guilt, not shame, just cold calculation. "You weren't supposed to see that," she said quietly. That's when I realized this wasn't a mistake or a momentary lapse. This was who she was, who they all were. And I had been living in a complete fiction for over a decade. My throat closed up. "How long?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer from the texts I'd seen. She didn't even try to deny it. "Does it matter?" The bathroom fan hummed in the background. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating our bedroom. These ordinary sounds in a moment that was splitting my life in two. "Who else knows?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, detached, like it belonged to someone else. "No one." She crossed her arms. "And no one needs to. We can work through this, Theo. It doesn't have to change anything." But it had already changed everything. I just didn't know yet how deep the betrayal went, or how I would find the strength to face what was coming. I didn't sleep that night. Laurel tried to talk, then threatened, then finally retreated to the guest room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the ceiling fan's rhythmic squeaking. By morning, I'd made my first decision. I called in sick to work. 20 years at the same architectural firm, and I'd never missed a day without planning it weeks in advance. But nothing felt real anymore. I was pouring coffee when Laurel appeared, dressed for her job at the marketing agency, makeup perfect, not a hair out of place. "I'm going to work," she announced. "When I get back, we should talk like adults." I stared at her, this stranger I'd shared a bed with for 15 years. Like adults? Was it adult to lie to my face every day? To let me host dinner parties for what should I call them? Your benefits package. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't be crude. It's complicated." "How long?" I asked again. She sighed, checking her watch. "Madison since the Aspen trip. 8 years. Vanessa about 6. Kylie's newer. 8 years. Almost our entire marriage." The room tilted again. "Drew is Vanessa's husband," she added, as if offering a peace token. "He doesn't know either." After she left, I sat at our kitchen island, surrounded by the life we'd built, wedding photos on the refrigerator, the hand-painted mugs from our anniversary trip to Santa Fe, the stupid rooster clock her mother had given us. All of it felt like props on a stage set. My phone buzzed. A text from Doug, my oldest friend. "Beer tonight?" Doug. The one person who might understand. We'd been friends since college, before Laurel, before any of this. He'd been through a divorce 3 years ago when his wife left him for her gym trainer. He'd survived. Somehow. My fingers hovered over the screen. Telling someone would make it real. but keeping it inside was already crushing me. "Need to talk," I texted back. "It's bad." His response came immediately. "My place, 6, bring whiskey." Doug's apartment was exactly what you'd expect from a recently divorced man. Minimalist furnishings, a giant TV, and empty beer bottles lined up on the kitchen counter like trophies. I'd brought the promised whiskey, a bottle of Macallan I'd been saving for a special occasion. This wasn't special, but it warranted good alcohol. "Jesus Christ," was all Doug said after I told him everything. He poured us each another 2 fingers of scotch. 8 years? And with multiple friends? I feel like such an idiot. My voice cracked. All those dinner parties. All those times Laurel went on girls' weekends. "The Aspen trip," Doug said quietly. "I remember." I looked up sharply. "What about it?" He shifted uncomfortably. "There were rumors. Nothing concrete. Camille mentioned something once, but I told her she was being dramatic." Camille, Doug's ex-wife. She'd been in Laurel's friend group before the divorce. Did Camille know? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Doug stared into his glass. "I think so. Maybe that's why she left. Maybe she couldn't face you knowing what she knew." The betrayal expanded, reaching into corners of my life I hadn't even considered. How many people had known? How many had looked at me with pity while keeping Laurel's secret? "What are you going to do?" Doug asked finally. I hadn't allowed myself to think that far ahead. Each hour since discovering the text had been about surviving until the next one. "I don't know. Divorce, I guess. You should talk to my attorney, Grace Harper. She's brutal but fair. Helped me keep the vacation property when Camille tried to claim it." The word divorce hung between us, making it real. "There's something else you should consider," Doug said, refilling our glasses. "Telling Drew." My stomach knotted. Drew and I weren't close, but we'd shared beers at backyard barbecues, talked sports, complained about work. Normal guy stuff. Did I owe him the truth? What if he doesn't believe me? Then show him the texts. He deserves to know, Theo. Just like you deserve to know. I nodded slowly. The weight of other people's marriages shouldn't be on my shoulders, but knowledge was its own burden. "One day at a time," Doug said, clinking his glass against mine. "Today, you drink. Tomorrow, you call Grace. Next week, maybe you talk to Drew. But tonight, you're not alone in this." For the first time since seeing those texts, something in my chest loosened. I wasn't alone. I returned home after midnight, slightly drunk and infinitely clearer about what needed to happen. The house was dark except for the porch light. Inside, Laurel had left a note on the kitchen counter. "Staying at Madison's tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." Madison's. Of course. I slept fitfully, but woke with resolve. Grace Harper's office opened at 9, and Doug had already texted her number. I made the call from my car, parked 3 blocks from our house, paranoid that Laurel might return unexpectedly. "Mr. Reynolds, I can see you at 11, Grace said, after I'd stumbled through an abbreviated version of my situation. Her voice was brisk, professional, exactly what I needed. Grace's office was in a renovated Victorian downtown, all polished wood and brass fixtures. She was a sharp-featured woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked black hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. "Before we discuss anything else," she said after introductions, "have you documented the evidence of the affairs?" I blinked. "I saw the texts, but I didn't take photos." She frowned. "Do you have access to her phone, email, social media accounts?" "No, she's password-protected everything for months." Grace made a note. "New York is a no-fault divorce state, so technically we don't need evidence of infidelity, but it can be leveraged during settlement negotiations." She leaned forward. "Do you want to save your marriage, Mr. Reynolds?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Did I? 15 years, a house full of memories, holidays with her family, the future we'd planned. "I don't see how," I said finally. "The trust is gone, and it wasn't just a mistake, it was years of deliberate deception." Grace nodded, unsurprised. "Then we need to be strategic. First, don't confront the other women or their husbands yet. That creates chaos we can't control." I thought of Drew, oblivious like I had been. Second, start documenting everything: conversations, spending patterns, anything unusual, and get copies of all financial records before telling your wife you're filing. The rest of the meeting was a blur of legal terms and strategy. By the time I left, clutching a folder of forms and instructions, my head was pounding. My phone buzzed in the elevator. "Laurel, where are you? We need to talk now." I turned my phone off, not ready for that confrontation. Instead, I drove to our bank and requested statements for all our accounts, joint and individual, for the past 5 years. The bank manager, Patrice, gave me a strange look. "Everything okay, Mr. Reynolds?" I forced a smile. "Just some tax planning." But as she printed the statements, I noticed her carefully not meeting my eyes. The paranoia that had been simmering since my conversation with Doug flared. Did she know something too? I couldn't avoid Laurel forever. By the time I pulled into our driveway that evening, her car was already there, and lights blazed from every window of our house as if she was making a statement. "I'm here, and you can't ignore me." She was waiting in the kitchen, a glass of red wine in front of her. Another glass stood empty across the table. A peace offering or a prop for the scene she wanted to create? "You went to a lawyer." Not a question, a statement. My stomach dropped. "How did you—" "Patrice called Madison. They play tennis together." Laurel took a sip of wine, her lipstick leaving a perfect crimson crescent on the glass. So much for discretion. The connections clicked into place. Patrice hadn't just known about the affairs, she was part of their wider circle. I'd walked right into their web without realizing it. "You have no right to be angry," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. 15 years, Laurel. 15 years of lies. Not everything was a lie." She pushed the empty wineglass toward me. I ignored it. Just the important parts. The bank statements felt heavy in my briefcase. "Like who you really are." Her expression hardened. "You never wanted to know who I really am. You were happy with the version of me that fit your life. The perfect wife who supported your career, hosted your colleagues, never complained about your late nights at the office. Don't you dare turn this around on me." Heat rushed to my face. "I never cheated. I never lied. I never betrayed you with your friends." "Friends with benefits," she corrected with a small, cruel smile. "And they gave me what you couldn't." What was that? Betrayal? Secrecy? Freedom. Understanding. She leaned forward. "Do you know how suffocating your devotion has been? How exhausting it is to be the object of such pedestrian adoration?" Each word was precisely calibrated to wound, and they found their mark. I'd thought our marriage was built on mutual respect and love. Instead, she'd seen my devotion as pedestrian, common, boring. "I want a divorce," I said, the words surprisingly easy to say now. "Of course you do." She sighed. "But before you go nuclear, consider what this means. Our friends, they're mostly my friends. Your firm does business with Madison's husband. Your sister's kids go to school with Kylie's. This will get messy, Theo, very messy." The threat was implicit but clear. She'd burn down our entire social world if I exposed her. "Are you blackmailing me?" "I'm being realistic. We could handle this privately, keep the structure of our lives intact. Or you could destroy everything because your feelings are hurt." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Drew. We need to talk." I met Drew at a diner 30 miles from town. Neutral territory. Far from prying eyes and loose-lipped acquaintances who might report back to the women in our lives. He looked terrible. Unshaven, red-eyed, his normally immaculate button-down wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. Or hadn't slept at all. "I found messages," he said without preamble. "Vanessa and your wife." Relief and dread washed over me simultaneously. "How much do you know?" "Enough." His hands trembled slightly as he poured creamer into his coffee. "Vanessa admitted everything when I confronted her. Said it's been going on for years, that I neglected her emotionally, whatever the hell that means." He looked up sharply. "Did you know?" "I just found out 2 days ago," I said. The admission felt like peeling back a bandage too soon. "The messages mentioned you. That's how I knew your name was connected. Drew's laugh was hollow. So we're the last to know. Fantastic. We sat in silence as the waitress refilled our cups. Two men whose lives had been shattered, sharing bad coffee and worse circumstances. Vanessa wants to work through this, Drew said finally. Says it wasn't about love, just exploration. His voice cracked on the last word. I don't know what to do. I thought of Laurel's calculated threat, the network of connections that could unravel if I pushed for the truth to come out. My wife suggested a private settlement, I said. Keep up appearances, protect our social standing. And what did you say? Nothing yet. I stared into my coffee. But I keep thinking about all the dinner parties, all the inside jokes I never understood, the way they'd look at each other sometimes. I thought it was just female friendship. All this time they were laughing at us. Drew's knuckles whitened around his mug. My brother warned me about Vanessa, said she was too flighty, too hungry for experiences. I defended her for years. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know yet, but I'm done being the punchline to a joke I didn't know was being told. He slid a folder across the table. These are copies of everything I found. Text messages, email exchanges, photos I wish I could unsee. Some involve your wife. I hesitated before taking it. Grace had advised against confrontations, against making moves that would alert Laurel to my plans. They think we'll just roll over, Drew said quietly. They think we're predictable. Maybe it's time we surprise them. The folder felt heavy in my hands. Evidence, ammunition, a grenade with the pin halfway out. I can't make your decision for you, Drew continued, but I thought you deserved to see the whole picture. I called Grace Harper from my car, the folder from Drew on the passenger seat like a ticking bomb. I need to see you. Today. I have evidence. To her credit, she fit me in at the end of the day. Her face remained professionally neutral as she reviewed the contents of the folder, but her eyebrows rose fractionally at certain images. This changes things, she said finally. With this level of documentation, we could push for a more favorable settlement. But Laurel's threatening to destroy my professional connections, my social circle. Mr. Reynolds, Grace interrupted, removing her reading glasses. In my experience, people who make those kinds of threats are usually protecting something beyond their reputation. What do you mean? The financial records you brought in show some irregularities, large cash withdrawals, transfers to accounts I haven't been able to trace. I was going to mention it at our next scheduled meeting. My mind raced. You think she's been hiding money? It's common enough in cases like this. People preparing for the possibility of discovery often create safety nets. She tapped the folder. The question is, what do you want? Financial justice? Public vindication? Or just to be free of this marriage with minimal damage? It was the question I'd been avoiding. What did I want? The humiliation of having been deceived for years burned in my chest. But beneath that was a deeper feeling. Grief for the life I thought I had, the woman I thought I'd married. I want the truth, I said finally. All of it. And then I want to move on. Grace smiled for the first time. Then we should move quickly. Based on her threats, your wife is likely already planning her next move. She was right. When I arrived home, Laurel was in our home office, the cabinet where we kept our important documents open and half empty. Looking for something? I asked from the doorway. She whirled around, startled, then composed herself. Just organizing some things. Like our investment statements? Property deeds? Her eyes narrowed. You've been busy. So have you. For years, apparently. I stepped into the room. I met with Drew today. The color drained from her face, then returned with a flush of anger. You had no right. No right? That's rich coming from you. My voice remained surprisingly calm. I know about the accounts, Laurel. The withdrawals. The transfers. You don't know anything. But uncertainty flickered in her eyes. I know enough, and Grace Harper knows more. Her expression hardened. So this is how it's going to be? Scorched earth? No, this is how it's going to be. You're going to tell me everything. About the money, about the affairs, about who else knew. Then we're going to reach a settlement that acknowledges what you've done without destroying both our lives. or we can let a judge decide after seeing all the evidence Drew provided. Laurel sank into the desk chair, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. For the first time since this began, she looked genuinely afraid. "You've been talking to Drew for how long?" "Long enough," I said, not revealing it had only been hours. "We've compared notes." She pressed her lips together, calculating. "What exactly do you want to know?" "It started with Madison," Laurel said, her voice hollow as we sat across from each other at the kitchen table. "After Aspen, it was supposed to be just that weekend, but then it became more." "And the money?" I pressed. She looked away. "I've been moving funds to a separate account for 3 years, almost $200,000. The amount hit me like a physical blow. Money we'd saved together. Money for our future. Madison suggested it, said every woman should have a freedom fund. Laurel's laugh was bitter. In case I ever wanted out. Who else knew? About everything. She sighed. Most of our close circle, Patrice, Camille before she left Doug. Madison's husband doesn't know about us, but he knows she's been with other women. She hesitated. Your boss's wife. I stared at her. Elizabeth? Walter's wife? Laurel nodded. We never, but she knows. She's covered for us at charity events, girls' trips. Each revelation was another crack in the foundation of my life. My boss's wife had known my marriage was a sham and said nothing, smiled at company parties, asked about Laurel when we passed in the hallway. I need account numbers, I said. All the documentation of where the money went. And if I provide that? If I tell you everything? Then we do this quietly. Split everything fairly, including the money you hid. No public exposure. You'd really keep this private? Even after everything? Doubt colored her voice. Not for your sake, I clarified. For mine. I don't want to spend the next year of my life being pitied as the oblivious husband. She studied me, perhaps seeing me clearly for the first time in years. I never meant to hurt you, but you did, repeatedly, deliberately, for almost our entire marriage. I know. Her admission was barely audible. I told myself you were happy not knowing, that I was protecting you by keeping my needs separate. That's the kind of lie people tell themselves to justify betrayal, I said. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourself. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, tense choreography. Laurel and I moved around each other like ghosts in our own home, communicating primarily through notes and texts. She provided the account information as promised, 3 different banks, one in a maiden name she hadn't used in 15 years. I returned to work, sitting in meetings, nodding at the right moments, all while carrying the knowledge that Walter's wife, Elizabeth, had been part of the conspiracy of silence. Each time Walter clapped me on the shoulder or mentioned weekend plans with the girls, my skin crawled. Drew and I met regularly at a bar 2 towns over, comparing notes, supporting each other through the wreckage of our marriages. Vanessa had moved out of their home, but unlike Laurel, she was fighting the divorce fiercely, threatening to expose Drew's past struggles with alcohol if he pushed for an equitable settlement. She doesn't get to win again, Drew said one evening, nursing a club soda. Not after everything. My sentiment exactly. Which is why, when Walter stopped by my office on a Thursday afternoon and casually mentioned hosting a dinner party that weekend. Just the usual crowd, Laurel said you'd both be there. Something inside me finally snapped. I won't be attending, I said, looking directly at him. And neither will Laurel, as my wife. We're divorcing. Walter's expression shifted from surprise to practiced sympathy. I'm sorry to hear that. Is there... Ask your wife, I interrupted. She can fill you in on all the details. She's known for years. I walked out before he could respond, pulse pounding in my ears. In the parking garage, I called Grace. I just told my boss about the divorce and that his wife knew about Laurel's affairs. Grace was silent for a moment. That complicates things professionally. I don't care anymore, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. I'm done living in their fiction. That evening, Laurel was waiting when I got home. You told Walter. I did. Elizabeth called me. She's furious. I imagine she is. I didn't bother hiding my bitterness. Being confronted with your complicity tends to be uncomfortable. Laurel's eyes filled with tears, real ones, not the calculated displays of the past. Everything's falling apart. Yes, I agreed. The carefully constructed lie is collapsing. That's what happens to things built without a foundation. 6 months later, I stood in the empty living room of what had once been our home. The closing had gone smoothly. Another couple eager to start their life together in a house with good bones, as the realtor had described it. If only they knew the secrets these walls had witnessed. The divorce was final. The settlement had included all the hidden assets after Grace successfully argued that Laurel's deception warranted a division favoring me. I hadn't wanted to punish her, just recover what was rightfully shared. My phone buzzed with a text from Doug. "Truck's loaded, ready when you are." Doug had been my rock throughout the process. When Walter had demoted me after our confrontation, citing performance issues, Doug had connected me with a former client who needed a project architect at his expanding firm in Denver. A fresh start, 3 states away from the wreckage of my past life. I took one last walk through the house, footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. In the kitchen, I remembered making Sunday breakfasts. In the bedroom, I thought of quiet mornings before the lies were exposed. Despite everything, there had been moments of genuine connection. Or perhaps that was just another illusion I'd created. Drew had finalized his divorce last month. Vanessa had ultimately backed down when faced with the evidence we'd compiled. He was staying local, but had found new purpose volunteering with a men's support group for those going through similar betrayals. "You'd be surprised how common our story is," he'd told me. As for Laurel's circle of friends, the carefully constructed network had fractured spectacularly. Madison's husband had filed for divorce after learning the full extent of her deceptions. Elizabeth had been forced to acknowledge her role when Walter had demanded answers. The consequences of truth had rippled outward, touching everyone who had participated in or enabled the lies. Outside, Doug honked the horn of his pickup. Time to go. I locked the door and placed the key under the mat for the new owners. As I walked away, I felt lighter than I had in years. The anger that had fueled me through the worst days had gradually transformed into something else: freedom. They had treated me as a fool, an accessory to their real lives, a punchline to jokes told behind closed doors. But in the end, I had refused to play my assigned role. I had demanded truth, faced it unflinchingly, and was now building something authentic from the ashes. No longer a victim, no longer defined by their betrayal. Just a man walking toward a future entirely his own.
Huh,